Hi everybody, and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to show you guys how to construct a whole body using basic shapes. Just like my facial construction video, I have some friends, Tom, Dick, and of course, Harry. So I'm going to go over the anatomy of the body first. That's important for construction. So in the blue, we have the skull. And I covered the skull in my facial construction video. We are also going to cover the rib cage, which is down here in red. The important thing about the rib cage is that it sits in front of the spine. So as a person goes from the frontal view to the side view, you see the rib cage sits more in front. And then we also have the hips. And the hips are going to be really important for determining male or female. And also pay attention to this point here. It's called the anterior superior iliac spine. That's going to be really important for landmarking. And I think that's just about it. So to determine a person's age, we'll usually use head heights to count them. So this is going to be an adult male. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a half heads tall. Okay, if you want to make somebody who's younger, simply use less heads. The other thing is that the legs make up approximately 50% of the body. So you'll see that we have 4 heads on top and the 4.5 heads below. And that marks out where the legs basically are. So I'm going to actually show you guys some guidelines to mark out where those heads are, just so we don't have to look at a tower of skulls every time we go to draw something. So the skull is obviously going to be 1 head tall. The torso is going to be 2 heads for the rib cage and an extra little bit for the abdomen. And the remaining head heights are going to be for the legs, divided roughly in half between the upper and lower leg. And I don't put a guideline at the bottom for the feet because I want to leave myself extra room for drawing the feet. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you guys are the construction lines. I'm not going to talk too much about the construction lines for the skull because I did cover that in an earlier video, but I will talk about the rest of the body. So the most important thing right now is going to be this line here, this line for the shoulders, and this line down here for the hips. And the ratio between those 2 lines is going to be what determines whether your character is going to be male or female. These skeletons that I have are male, and you can tell because the shoulders are wider than the hips. If you'd like to draw a female character, you simply make the hips about equal or even maybe a little bit wider than the shoulders. So taking a look at the blue, you can see that this torso is a roughly masculine kind of shape. And I'll show you what the female would look like. So all I'm going to do to make this a female is I'm going to make the hip line a bit wider. And connecting the lines, you can see that you would get a more of an hourglass female shape. Now to talk about the shapes that I'm going to use. So the rib cage is going to be represented by a low oval going up and down. And the hips are going to be represented by this strange shape here. It's basically a triangle on the bottom and an oval on the top. And then I'm going to use some circles for the shoulders, elbows, and knees, making sure that the knees are the largest of those circles. And then I'm going to use straight lines to represent the long bones. The hands are going to be constructed with this narrowed on one side rectangle shape. Hands tend to be quite difficult. I'm not going to go too deep into them. But this here is the basic shape that you use for constructing hands. Sort of a square that's more narrow on one end. Finally, there's going to be a line down the middle to represent the spine. Going over to our 3/4, you'll see that the lines for the shoulders and the lines for the hips they're going to be slightly angled, and I'll talk more about that later when I get into the drawing. You'll also notice that the spine is more curved now. There are 4 curves in the spine, representing the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and coccygeal curves. And you'll see that the rib cage is situated more to the front of that. You'll also notice that the hip shape has been slightly warped. You're starting to see a little bit of the character's buttock in this position, so you'll see that one side starts to become more round, and you'll start to see the angle of the triangle becoming a little bit more steep. Still using the same basic shapes to represent the hands and the long bones. That doesn't change. And the feet will be represented by triangles in this position, whereas in the frontal view they're represented by squares. And then finally, doing the side view, you'll see that the curves of the spine are much stronger, and that's because we can see them at a better angle. The rib cage becomes more of a teardrop shape, and it's sitting in front of the spine. And the hips take a very different shape, where the angle at the front is more vertical, and it's more of a circle now in the back to represent the shape of the hips. And then just to show you the joints again, the joints are represented by circles, and they're connected by lines for the long bones. And making sure that the knee circles are larger than the shoulders, and that they're larger than the elbows, as knees usually are. Okay, let's get into the actual drawing of our shapes, and I'll talk a little bit more about the construction of these foundations. So I'll start off with the frontal view, and to construct the head, like I said, there's another video on that. I'm just going to draw a circle, and then I'm going to draw a line down the center of it to do the front of the face, and then I'm going to connect those lines to draw the jaws. The next thing I'm going to draw is going to be the spine, and in the frontal view, unless a person is curving their spine, a straight line is good enough. Then I put in the line to represent where the shoulders are going to be, and I do another line to represent where the hips are going to be. And I'm going to make sure that the line for the shoulders is wider than the head. You wouldn't make that line smaller than the head unless it's a smaller character like a child. Okay. Now to add in the oval to represent the ribs, and I'm keeping in mind that I need to fill most of the space between the head and the hips. Add in circles for the shoulders, and then I'm going to add my triangle bottom oval top shape to represent the hips. I kind of think of it as a little bit like rounded underwear. And then I'm going to draw some lines to represent the humerus, and the length of this humerus needs to go lower than the torso. If it's not lower than the torso, the arms will be too short. And then I'm going to draw lines to represent the bones of the forearm, and they're going to come up just about the hip level so that the hands can hang lower than the hips. And then I'm going to draw my hand construction shapes. I'm not going to get too far into the hands. Hands are their own topic. Okay. And then the last thing, well, second to last thing, is to draw lines for the legs. Now the legs are going to come out of the side of the hip shape that we have. And I like to draw them all the way down first before I put in the knee so that they look more fluid. And then I'm going to add in my circles to represent the knee, making sure that they are in fact bigger than the shoulders. And then for the feet, I like to just draw a little dash rather than a circle for this joint, and draw the lines coming out at an angle. This helps me see it more in a 3D kind of shape and helps me visualize the lower part of the legs of the character better. For the 3/4, I'm going to construct my skull again in a similar way to the frontal view. And this time when I go to draw the spine, I'm going to make sure I put those curves in. So for the neck, the cervical spine is going to curve forward. For the thoracic, it's going to curve backward. And then for the lumbar, it's going to curve forward again. And I'm not going to bother drawing the coccyx because that's represented in the hips, because the coccyx is actually fused to the bones of the hip. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys a cube. So this is a cube in a 3/4 view, the same as our character. And you'll notice that the lines that show depth are going off at an angle. So when I draw my lines for the shoulders and for the hips, I'm going to draw them going off at an angle in the same way. And I'm still going to make sure that they're longer than the head. And it's going to be shifted slightly towards the left. And same thing for the line for the hips. To draw the ribs, it's the same oval shape, but it's slightly skewed forward and it's slightly sitting forward on the spine that I've drawn. I'm going to draw my circles to represent the shoulders, and the shoulder that's closest should be slightly larger because it is closer to us. Now that we're doing a 3/4 view, we're going to have to pay attention to depth. I'm going to draw the hip shape. It's more steep in the front now and more rounded on the side, but not as extreme as you'll see in the side view. Once again, I'm going to draw an arm to represent the length of the humerus and another one to represent the length of the forearm, and then do my hand construction. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side. When you're doing this rough construction, it's a good idea to just draw the line right through your foundation shapes. That way you'll get a straight line and a more accurate idea. You can always erase your construction lines later, but you want to make sure that there's a straight line between your elbow and your shoulder in this view. And then I'm going to draw the hand. The last thing for the 3/4 view is to draw the legs. Now, keeping in mind what I'd said about the line of the shoulder and the line of the hip, the same thing is going to occur with the legs. So the leg that is closest to us is actually going to be longer. So I'm going to draw this leg to be about the same length as the frontal view. Then the other leg is going to be a little bit shorter. Maybe just a little longer than that. Yeah, I'm going to make that just a little bit longer. Just a little bit. And that is the construction. Make sure I add some knees. The knee on the longer leg should be closer to the bottom. So again, maintaining this angle that shows some depth. So that angle is shown throughout the hips, the shoulders, the knees, the feet, and the length of the legs. Okay, last, we're going to do the construction of the side view. So I'm going to construct my side view head, which is wider than the other heads. And then I'm going to draw the spine. So the spine in this view is going to show its curves much more strongly. So you're going to curve to the front, curve to the back for the length of the thoracic cavity, which is 2 head heights tall. And then I'm going to start curving forward again for the lumbar spine. Lumbar spine is where you're going to feel your back pain on a daily basis. Then to draw the ribs, it's a teardrop shape sitting in front of the spine and slightly towards the back of the spine as well, because the ribs do sort of reach around and they do attach onto the spine. For the hip, I'm going to draw a horizontal line and then a more vertical line to the front and a curved line to the back to represent the buttock and the muscles that are back there. Then, to add in the shoulder, I'm going to go almost to the top of the ribs and draw a circle. And then I'm going to do the rest of the arm. Again, lines to represent the long bones, circles to represent the joints, and that narrowed square shape to do the hand. And I'm just going to play around with a few ideas for lines. Now, I think I like it in a much more neutral pose. The legs are really easy to draw in the side view because you only need to draw one leg because it's going to be obscuring the back leg. Draw a big circle for the knee and draw a triangle shape for the foot. And I'm just realizing I did not draw feet on the other characters. So for the 3/4 view, they are triangles, and for the front view, they're sort of squares that get wider towards the bottom. And then for Harry, it's definitely going to be a right angle triangle. And those are the basic construction lines for figures. Now I'm going to show you guys how to attach the muscle to these characters. So if these foundations are the skeletons, this part is going to be where we add muscle. So I'm going to fade out my sketches, and we're going to go back to the frontal view. And in fact, I think I'm going to zoom in just so I can get in just a little bit more detail. That's too much. Back up. Okay, good. And I'm not going to worry about the top of the head because if I were fully drawing these characters, they're going to have hair up there. So I'm going to connect the face, and I'm going to set the width of the neck. The wider the neck is, the more masculine the character is. And then these lines here are going to represent the trapezius. Draw the shoulder, follow the contour and of the circle, and pinch in. Then I like to go up and start connecting the torso. So all you have to do to connect the torso is to connect the oval of the ribs to the oval of the hips and make sure it narrows in a little bit. From there, you're going to just connect the shoulder to the line that's the elbow. You can add a little bit more thickness to represent the muscles. So towards the top, right there, you can see the thickness to represent the tricep head. For the forearms, the outside is going to be sort of a curving line, and the inside is going to be slightly bent at an angle to represent the flexor muscles that are close to the elbow. And it's going to narrow towards the hand. And then you'll do a kind of square shape for the hand. And I normally don't draw the rest of the hand until I've gone to a further stage of drawing, because they are more detailed and they're more difficult. I usually do them when I'm doing the details of the face, and I'll probably do a separate video for hands later. Okay, and then you can draw in these lines here. These lines represent the lats. For the legs, you're going to go not quite to the center and connect the inside of the leg using basically a straight line. The outside of the leg is going to be more curved. And the reason why is that more of the flexor muscles tend to be located on the side of the leg. And the reason the inside of the leg is a straight line is because the adductor muscles are quite long and not quite so bulky. And then you're going to connect to the knee. And then to draw the calf muscles, the outside of the calf muscle is going to have a bit of a pinch, just like that, and going to narrow towards the foot. The inside is going to be more of a curved shape. So you'll curve the inside, but you'll bend the outside. And then sort of narrow towards the ankles. So again, curve the inside. I should also mention that you don't want to do these too extreme. Subtle curves are probably better in most cases. And then to draw the foot, I just sort of imagine a shoe, and then I go from there. So it should sort of pinch in the middle, and just fix up this line here. Make that a little bit thicker. And that's the construction of the frontal view. Let's move over to the 3/4 view. So for the 3/4 view, I'm going to do the contour of the face. And remember, it pinches in just a little bit for the eye, and then out for the cheek. And then I'm going to draw the neck in a very similar way. So a little bit thin for him. This curve for the shoulder is basically identical to the frontal view. And now what you need to do is you need to keep in mind that there are 3 layers of depth. There's the arm and leg that are closest to us, there's the torso in the middle, and then there's the back arm. So the contours are going to follow that. So the torso contour should block the back arm. The contour of the front arm should block the contour of the torso. So that's why I'm actually going to erase this line here and make it get taken over by the line of the arm, because the arm is in front of the torso and the torso is in front of the back arm. If you can keep it straight like that there are 3 planes of depth, you should have an easy time knowing which line covers which line. For the forearms, it's a very similar shape as the frontal view. And you can draw the lat here. You wouldn't draw the lat on the other side because it's now being hidden by the chest. For the shoulder, just a really small indication is all you need, and then to connect the arm. Again, sort of making sure the outside is more of a curve and the inside is bent. Finish up the hand. Okay. So, paying attention to our 3 layers of depth when we do the legs is going to be important. So, the legs are basically going to be constructed in a very similar way, except the front leg is going to block the contour of the hips, just like this. And I can draw the rest of the back of the leg. The back of the leg can be slightly curved now, thicker towards the top. And I can draw this far leg in the very back of everything. The leg construction is basically going to be the same as the frontal view. Make sure that it's bent on the outside and curved on the inside for the calves. Again, so bent on the outside and then curved on the inside for the calves. Nice, kind of a sweeping shape. Make sure you don't go too narrow because you won't give yourself any room to draw the feet. And then to draw the feet, again, just sort of imagine that the person is wearing like a shoe or they're wearing some socks. Feet tend to be quite difficult, but maybe we'll have to do a few videos sometime too to talk about what's going on here. I wouldn't worry too much about feet anyway. Most of the time when you're drawing a character, they're going to be wearing some kind of a shoe or some kind of a boot, so it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, this is still a sketching phase, so it doesn't have to be perfect at this phase either, but it should be a little bit more refined. And then finally, going to do the side view. So I'll make sure I show the contours of the face here, dipping in for in front of the eyes and sticking out for the nose, and drawing in the jawline. Now for the side view, I actually like to follow the back of the neck all the way down the whole contour of the back. That's my preferred way of doing it. And then I'll draw the front of the neck and let that connect into the ribs. And then I connect my ribs to my hips. For the arm, you're connecting them, and you can see a little bit more of the muscle of the upper arm in this view. So let me just sort of go through and try to emphasize more of the bicep. So the head of the bicep is going to be closer to the belly of the bicep is going to be closer to the elbow, whereas the belly of the tricep, the muscle in the back, is going to be closer to the shoulder. And so I'm just trying to go through and draw that. And then in this view, the forearms can almost be done with essentially straight lines because you can't see the muscle bellies so clearly in this view. I find it interesting that depending on the view you're in, you can sometimes not see muscle that's there. So even like a strong looking character might look like they have small arms in certain views. For the back of the leg now, we're going to start adding a bend. Kind of like this, but that's a little bit too strong. And that's because now we can see the shape of the hamstrings more. So a little bit more gentle in my curve like that. And the front of the leg is going to be a slightly curved line. And then the calves are going to be pinching at the front and just a straight line. Sometimes even a line that curves backwards is done for the front of the leg. And that's because there's not very much between the bone and the skin. So you can get away with a very, very straight line there. And that is the quick and dirty of the basic construction of figures. I think what I'll do is at some point I'll go through each body part more in depth and maybe consider this more of a general overview to get you started drawing some things with more detail come down the pipe later. So let's zoom out and take a look at how we did. I think those look pretty good. I think the rib cage on Tom might have to be a little bit bigger. He looks quite lean, but the rest of them seem more or less okay to me. Alright, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys later.